Thank you, guys.
2 weeks ago, Raish and I met up to plan out this talk. We tried looking online for inspiration, but TEDx speeches with two people are pretty rare, so we needed to think about how we would structure this.
I'm someone who works very well with a schedule, so we agreed to meet up at 4:50 p.m. at the school cafeteria. As I approach the cafeteria, I see Kev walking out. I call out to him, he waves, and then walks the other way. And I'm thinking, what's happening? So I wait, and he doesn't come back. So I text him, he says 2 minutes. 20 minutes later, he finally shows up. What were you doing, Kev?
I was having an interesting conversation about pedagogy, academic elitism, the sorts. And obviously, the party next weekend. It wasn't planned, but it was quite nice. And it was nice to break out of the rut of presentations and reaction memos. And I knew we'd get to the speech soon enough anyway.
So clearly, two very different approaches. This is my brain. And this is Kev's brain.
And just for the record, her brain isn't bigger, like just the image is smaller here. Anyway, my unstructured approach seems unsustainable in the long run.
And mine can make it kind of hard to work with people sometimes.
So what is the middle ground?
We're always taught to think in binaries. Social media gurus tell us that, you can either have money or happiness, grind now and then retire early, Kev versus Raisha. But clearly, we got a speech out there. So there must be a spectrum, a way of making different ways of life work. In fact, we think that this spectrum exists within every individual.
Nobody is planned and all the time or spontaneous and unstructured 24/7 either. That's because life demands different degrees of planning and going with the flow, depending on the situation. So then the conundrum is, how does one strike a balance? Raisha?
And that's our answer. Creative destruction, a highly individualized mechanism that allows one to embrace the fluidity of life through self-exploration and self-assessment. Creative destruction was a term first coined by the economist Joseph Schumpeter, which refers to the process by which new innovation replaces older technologies. Destruction is usually a negative term, but here it's the first step to construction. So when applied to our daily lives, creative destruction is the same as self-discovery, wherein the more you learn about yourself, the more you're better able to innovate new systems that work for you.
Of course, that doesn't render your old systems useless. They're cushioned by new layers that better fit your needs. And a person isn't a smartphone where self-improvement means a race for the next update. We rarely ever notice what an update does, so improvement isn't the only point. And rather than constantly and consciously thinking about your next update, we suggest you play around, be creative, and explore a little bit.
And on that note, Kev, why don't you get us started?
So as I approached the end of secondary school, I realized I was far from the person I wanted to be, but I wasn't exactly sure what that was either. So I was very much a reflection of my parents. They was exactly what they wanted me to be. And I yearned for a sense of individuality and uniqueness. But this desire, it led me astray. I wasn't able to study properly, I wasn't really doing much, and the lockdowns did not help. So what did I do? Growing up, my dad always told me to use a calendar, so I tried that.
And how did that go?
It did not work. I would get frustrated when things didn't go to plan, and I would end up sacrificing time and quality of work as a result. The traditional productivity methods really didn't seem to fit. So I tried the Pomodoro method as well, and 25 minutes of solid work, I did fine. But then I did a solid 25-minute break too, and I realized I was also doing something wrong there. So then I looked introspectively and thought, how do I individualize all of these productivity methods? So I'm the kind of person who, once they've locked in, is able to work for a good amount of time. So rather counterintuitively, I decided to get rid of the clocks in my room. And I would essentially just work until I was hungry or I noticed the sun move a lot. And then I would take a break. So this allowed me more time to do things I genuinely enjoyed. So I started to structure working around my hobbies with a lot of freedom for change and trying new things. So I started going to the gym right after school or right after finishing work. And that prevented me from burnout as I was doing an activity that I enjoyed, a routine one, in tandem with my work. So in the summertime as well, on the weekends, I would play basketball with some friends. in the local park after school, and I would only go after finishing a certain amount of work. And this led to a great balance in my life.
That sounds great, but this might not work for everybody, like for me, who might not be able to enjoy hobbies without finishing off work first.
And that's the best part. You can personalize it to your own methodology and taste. And this concept doesn't just apply to productivity. It is a concept that is central to personal development. We're often inspired or look up to those who have what we don't, and we see how they did it and try to model our journey of theirs. But sometimes we very much forget the personal in personal development, since everyone has their own unique circumstances, contexts, strengths, and weaknesses. And coming back to the concept of individuality here, I thought I had to stick to the personality that was essentially the physical embodiment of what my parents wanted. I fell victim to the sunk cost fallacy. I viewed the past not as valuable experiences in of themselves, but as an investment that would go to waste otherwise. And one day, I very much said screw it, and tried out new things for the first time. I started to explore. I found things I liked, like climbing and martial arts. But I also found things I absolutely hated, like running. And slowly, I realized how much fun I was having with these new experiences and said, well, I have nothing to lose or to worry about right now. Why don't I go and study in a different country for university? And I did that, and I haven't looked back since. And that inspired even more confidence. Like, I solo traveled over the 1A holidays. And that was a great experience because I finally got to do whatever I wanted with only myself to hold me accountable. And all of this stems from one thing: the willingness to explore and be spontaneous. For everyone, the extent of this exploration will differ, of course. But pushing outside of your comfort zone every now and then can show you a variety of new things in a way where you can build upon the old, innovate, and gain new perspective in the process of creative destruction, but in the domain of the self. And whilst we wander the earth in search of purpose, or whatever we're looking for, one of the best ways is to innovate, because maybe the answer isn't held in the experience you already have, or maybe you aren't just able to realize it yet. But then, how do we keep ourselves in check, balancing spontaneity with structure and strategy? Raisha, I guess that's one for you.
All right. So that's me on my 18th birthday, with the tattoo I got to celebrate. What is it, you ask? Well, when I first thought about this tattoo, I thought it perfectly encapsulated the way I like to live my life, as a to-do list. If you don't believe me, these are a couple screenshots from my Google Calendar and my Notes app. For years, I've liked to plan everything, from when I wake up, go to bed, call my mom, and even be spontaneous. In many ways, I see planning as doing, and that's what the first tick in my tattoo represents. If I plan it, I note it down, I won't forget, and then I'll probably get it done. But 2 years into the unpredictable, unfathomable, unimaginable mess that college really is, I've realized how hard it can be to tick everything on my list. In fact, so many times it's so hard to even figure out what to put onto my list. Think about it this way. If while driving, you're always thinking about 4 cars ahead, chances are you'll crash into the car right in front of you. In fact, I did that. Last summer, while driving, I kept thinking about the things I had to do when I got home, like go to the gym and meet my friends, that I got very distracted and crashed my parents' car so bad, they had to sell it. But that was also the exact moment I learned the lesson of planned playfulness, which is my philosophy of being spontaneous and fun and all that good stuff without veering off track completely. And how did I do that? Well, by looking closer and realizing that the real value of my tattoo lies in those bottom 2 unticked boxes. In college, I have my Google Calendar, and it's definitely my life manifesto, but I also know its limits very well. Over my 2 years here, I've realized that I can't plan everything, not without forgetting that life actually happens in the white spaces between your Google Calendar. Those 10 minutes when you rush between classes to grab a coffee at the vending machine, that's where you'll meet your future roommate. Or the random white blanks wherein the Wi-Fi goes off in the library and you cannot finish your assignment on time. Or that very same roommate calling you frantically to help get the spider out of the kitchen. Also a true story. The last 2 ticks in my tattoo are where my daily innovation happens, where I destroy and then construct again. And how? Well, let's go through it tick by tick. As you can see, that second box there is open, which means it still has the potential to hold a tick someday. And the way I implement this into my daily life is through a system I called noted visions, wherein creativity can breed creativity. Every time I do something creative, like, I don't know, adding a fun little GIF into my history presentation, another idea sparks in my head. It's like a vision almost, wherein one idea sparks an idea to do something creative in another area of my life. For example, the other day, I was doing a dance workout at my gym Zumba class, and then I thought, it might also be really fun to perform for an upcoming campus event. So it wasn't planned, and I wasn't asked to do it, but because I had that vision of adding that creativity to my life, I could make my list longer spontaneously and tick that second unpredictable box. That said, sometimes the creativity and the visions, they don't strike. I mean, the only way out of a writer's block is through.
But unfortunately, explaining that to the speakers team didn't really work so well, so I guess we're here now.
Yeah, sorry guys. But back to my last box, which is closed and untickable, to remind me that no Google Calendar can ever fully script life spontaneity. There will simply always be more to do. And the first week of college, I realized that. I was really struggling with FOMO because everyone around me was finding the perfect group of friends, and I thought that I was being left behind. So instead of continuously stressing about that, I decided, let's try and game the system. Instead of trying to find that perfect group of friends, I just invested myself in the process of getting to know people. So every time I would meet someone cool, I'd put them on my weekly hit list and just make it a point to schedule coffee or dinner with them.
Raish, was I ever on that weekly hit list?
Not really. But many other people were, and there were so many of these cool people that I realized I couldn't ever fit them all into my schedule and make it work. But that also wasn't the point. My weekly hit list just showed me the kinds of people I naturally gravitated towards. So it was kind of an act of self-discovery, if nothing else. All in all, my tattoo shows me that life can be like a list. But you probably can't tick it all, and also not realize all to put onto it. So just innovate regardless.
But Raisha, isn't there still a problem thinking about life like a checklist?
Yeah, that's kind of true. That's why I got a second tattoo. Sorry, Mom. This one says, Ab hoga kya, which is Hindi for what now. The thing about spontaneity, especially when you don't work too well with uncertainty, like for someone like me, is that it starts to very quickly feel like everything's spinning out of control. I mean, even the best actors struggle with improv. So this second tattoo allows me to express how to figure out what now through creative destruction, such that I can support these spontaneous decisions through a cathartic system of reflection and review. According to Ali Abdaal, the author of the New York Times best-selling Feel Good Productivity, one of the life systems that gives him structured flexibility is something he calls a 5-5-5 review process. The way it works is that in the morning, you take 5 minutes to set goals. Then every hour for 5 minutes, you just review how those goals are going. And at the end of the day, you take 5 minutes to reflect on how things went overall. I try to use this 5-5-5 system as well, but I've also tried to personalize it. So step 1 is dividing my goals into 5. 1 for classes, 1 for social commitments, 1 for any imminent deadlines, and the last 2 for life's spontaneous surprises. Then, with the 5-minute owl reviews, I can answer ab hoga kya, since I can always reset my goals based on the needs. Finally, with the last review at the end of the day, I can ensure that I honor the spontaneity that came my way by seeing how it enhanced things rather than completely derailed all plans. This lets me be planned and playful at the same time, and because I know that I'll always be reviewing and reflecting, uncertainty doesn't really scare me anymore. In fact, I try to embrace it.
All in all, when we apply creative destruction to our lives, we stop treating life like a race towards the next best thing.
And unlike a linear sprint, a marathon has twists, turns, and terrain. It goes round and round and round and then stops right where it started.
This kind of reminds me how my mum used to say, you come into this world with nothing and you leave with nothing.
That's true. But what you do leave with is the cramps, the tears, the sweat, and the supporters, and also that one really annoying pop song that got you through the last mile.
Creative destruction is about treating life like a marathon, not a sprint, where innovation happens where you play, stray off track, and then come back to do it all over again.
Thank you.